Ah, welcome, bienvenue. Welcome once again to another IPSA kind of magic. I've got to say, Heather and Hamish, you may not realize this, but I follow our ratings, and we get a regular viewers of between 200 and 300 people a session these days. It's quite nuts.
Excellent.
I don't understand why. Some of them from all over the world, but thank you to all of you currently viewing. I thank you, and that's because we try and keep the content fresh and the content up to date. Although we will tend to bang a drum about certain things, and today is no exception. Today, the topic is, and I'm going to ask for Hamish to qualify this in a second. Unveiling the detective work in conveyancing, how IPSA members are the unsung heroes. And as per usual, I'm throwing you straight under the bus.
Well, not to admit to the fact that I'm a Dr. Watson or anything of that nature in support of dear old Sherlock. In fact, it's rather fortunate that, and I mean, Heather will remember this as well, there was a time when you went into land charges offices, you needed to actually sort of take a magnifying glass with you, because a lot of detail was held either on maps that weren't of any decent sort of size, or alternatively, there was planning permissions on microfiche, which you couldn't actually read sort of perfectly correctly. And so there's all sorts of things. So they were an enormous, helpful item to be able to sort of take along with you, along with many other things, to try and bribe the land charges officers into sort of helping us out.
Can you just give them cream cakes or something? Wouldn't that work?
We take them in occasionally. They like that. They like that. We got to know their birthdays and things. However, we were fortunate yesterday. We were speaking to a very, very experienced conveyancing solicitor yesterday, and effectively what we find, and they find as well, did Sam kindly admit to, was the fact that most days are stress days for them, but it gets all the more problematic when you get near, like we are at this moment. Stamp duty is coming forth. We know that the stamp duty change comes at the end of the month, and there's lots of pressure. And what we're able to sort of indicate, and what we're trying to sort of present today, is ways in which IPSA members do actually save conveyancers time in terms of the work which they actually sort of do. And if we can cut the time out on their behalf, because basically they're the real detectives. They're the ones that are going in there because they want to make sure that their clients are going into, without any risk at all, into the home that they want to be part of. And effectively what we do, we let them be the clever ones. We let them be the Sherlock Holmes of this world, but we can actually read situations for them because we know certain things that ought to be there, and we can help, and we can provide them without them even asking. But it's all down to the relationship we have with the councils. But there are some lovely sort of savings, and Heather actually collects them much more so than I do, and because she's been doing it for sort of 8 years now, Heather. When people actually contact her and let her know of all the great things that they've been able to do out there. But we've got a few to share with you anyway.
Heather, can I throw you in there, Dr. Watson, I presume?
Well, I think, so what Hamish was talking to me about the other day was how IPSA members can help their conveyancing clients to save time. So they might get an extra 5 minutes to have a cup of tea, or an extra hour to go out for a walk at lunchtime. And I think one of the things that I've tried to promote since I very first started in this industry, which is over 20 years ago now, was that we as search agents, we consider ourselves part of the conveyancing team. I consider myself to be an extra team member. So if one of my conveyancing clients needs to know something, I want them to think, well, I can send a quick email to Heather and she'll point me in the right direction, or she might be able to even do something more. For example, if they're coming across a property, probably like a commercial property that they don't deal with very often, and they're not sure which route to go down in terms of the environmental report, they can send me a quick email and I can say, right, these are your options. These are the product cards for those different environmental reports, so that they can make a more informed decision about what they need without having to spend hours finding out what's available. So it's that kind of knowledge that we have that we can impart quickly and easily to save some time in the conveyancer's day.
But it seems to me that far from just trotting out information, on the push of a button, you guys do a bit more research, and that has to be down to the relationships you've built. So you're a very convivial Mr. Watson, who's more than happy to become friendly with those land charges people.
Yes, we've always had to become friendly with them, and it works because if I've got a search, if I have a standard search that I know in particular council is going to take around about 10 working days, and 10 working days is pretty acceptable to most conveyancers. But let's just say something comes up and it's really urgent. If I have a good relationship with that council, and if I don't tell them every single case is urgent, but I ring up and I say, look, this particular one, there was one came up the other day. We did the searches on it 6 months ago. It's been held up because there was a lease problem and one thing and another. So they're almost at completion and realise, oh my goodness, the search is over 6 months old. We need to redo it. And we don't want to have another extension, etc., etc. So I've been able to ring the council, say, look, can you help out? It is one that we did 6 months ago. And they've turned it around the same day for me so that I can get it back to that client on the same day. And that is based on a relationship, because I don't abuse that relationship and say, oh, yeah, they're all urgent. I'm willing to accept the standard turnaround time unless my client has a problem and needs it sooner. And I think, all of it, when you talk to all the IPSA members, when we do get together on our very convivial days, that is the sort of thing we're all doing. We've built up relationships with planning departments, building control departments, highways departments, and of course land charges, which helps us when there's an urgent case or if there's a problem that needs solving.
I know that recently you had one of your shindigs you got together. There was members of people from land charges. There were people from all sorts of people like Wiggy Wham and all sorts there, and they're all happily hobnobbing along. I do think that it is critical in your business, the relationship build. I think it's more than people might imagine. I think most people think that when you're doing searches, you push a few buttons, pull a few levers, and out pops the result. Well, they don't realize it's a kind of herding kittens affair where you're trying to get people to provide the right answers to the right questions, but at the same time build that relationship so they don't feel like you're picking upon them. You're working together. I think that's it's remarkable. And I noticed it, and I had the pleasure of being at one of your get-togethers, and everybody there is just up for it. They're all up for helping each other.
Yes, oh, very much so. We were discussing it recently that technically we are all competitors. We all run similar businesses, and we're all trying to get new customers. But it doesn't ever feel like we're competitors, because if somebody in Yorkshire has a problem trying to sort something out in Cornwall, the person in Cornwall will help the person in Yorkshire. We help each other out. We intertrade as well. So obviously that's about building relationships, but it doesn't feel like we're competitors. It really feels that we're all on the same page.
That's amazing. Hamish, do you feel that there has been a seismic shift towards greater unity over the time and since you've been chairman? It does seem to be that IPSA all seems to be pulling in the right direction now. This is just me being a commentator from the outside.
Well, in fairness, it always has been a cooperative. It always has been, had ever since the very first time. And Heather would say this too. From the very first time either of us actually went along to IPSA, we felt part of something that was actually sort of rather special. And of course, over time, one gets to know people all the better anyway. And I think that it can be said that we're certainly some aspects we're working closer. I think we're fortunate because what we do have now, we have some great partners, and because of the partners that we're also working with, who actually contribute to what we're able to do, that is helping the situation all the more. and it does make it so much more cohesive. But the other aspect, and we sometimes forget this, that when we have a sort of chain reaction, it works in both directions. So what we've been able to do, which isn't so much available now because of the times have changed, that
Right.
relationship with the council, but our relationship with our clients. And like sort of Heather was actually speaking, the clients get to know us, and they'll phone us up and say, rather than phoning a council up with a query, they'll often now phone us up and say, oh, what about such and such a thing? And you say, sometimes we can give them the direct answer anyway, but if we can't give them the direct answer, we just sort of say, leave it with me. And as Heather said, we're part of that particular sort of team. We're their sidekick. We're working alongside them. And in some instances, we don't exactly get, we get, because we're working with them so closely, certain agreements, like Section 106 agreements, we know they're automatically going to ask the council. So rather than the client have to bother doing that, rather than our solicitor, we just get those, and we just include them automatically as well, because over time we found that saves them. And that, to me, we're not providing just product. We're providing a service alongside it. We're going into greater depth to look at things. Local people are doing the research work, but it's that we're able to do. And it can be that couple of hours of saving time, but there's also that other one, and that relationship that Heather sort of says that you can pick up. Somebody said, oh, crikey, we've got to close this deal down in sort of, we've got to close it in a fortnight. I've been told by somebody else they can't get this search for another 2 or 3 weeks. What can you do? And on occasion, like Heather said, if it's special and they know you're not taking it, whatever, they can turn it around in 24 hours. They can turn it around in 2 days. They can turn it down in a week. And it's happening all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, Heather, can you tell me some tales from the front line?
Tales from the front line. Goodness, there's so many of them. But yeah, it's I suppose we were talking the other day about saving time, and one of those things is one of the environmental companies that we work with. We know that if there's a problem on that environmental report, rather than them sending it back to us as a fail, so that we then have to pass it on to the client and discuss how we're going to go around it. There's one company in particular where they won't send it back to us until they've investigated every possible avenue to try and clear that report, so that our client doesn't even see that there was a week's worth of backwards and forwards to the council to try and find out whether the contaminated land issue had been solved. Our client just sees the past report. So it's things like that. We're just trying to save constantly the time and hassle for our clients. And there are many examples of that kind of thing. I'm just trying to think of the most recent one. We had one back where it said it was in a flood area, and I looked at the plan. This wasn't the same company, but I looked at the plan and I thought, I know it's a flood area, but I also know that those houses have never actually flooded. Their gardens have flooded, and it's come close, but they've never actually flooded. So I was able to
How did you know that? How did you know that?
Because I have friends that live in those houses and have lived in them since living new. So
it's extended relationship.
This is your local knowledge, isn't it? So I was able to go back, and of course they've got records that although that land floods, those houses don't. They were built in such a way that they're slightly raised and they don't flood. So they were able to find further evidence to back up what I'd said and to pass that before I even sent it on to my client. So, it's those sort of things where you can see a problem, and rather than just pass the problem on to your client, you solve it or go as far as you can towards solving it before you go back to your client. And that's something that we're doing on an almost daily basis, I would say. So,
I mean, the topic today, I just want to close it out before we shut this down for today. The topic for today was how IPSA members are the unsung heroes. And what you were driving at, Hamish, is you are the sidekicks to the conveyancing process. You are the behind the scenes people with the little oil cans oiling the wheels to make sure it goes through. Is that right? Have I got that right?
Well, yes, we take the squeaks out. Yes, I guess guess that's how you just adding on to one of Heather's comments there, which was quite an interesting one that we actually sort of had, which demonstrates again it's the local knowledge. Flooding issues and what's happening relative to flooding. When one goes back 15, 20 years ago, everything of that nature was handled by the council or county council normally, but everything's been passed on to the Environment Agency now. And if you have to go through the Environment Agency to get the information, yes, you can get it, but it's very, very long term. But there was one particular instance which actually sort of came up, and because I knew the council itself, I spoke to them and I said, look, who was responsible for the environment issues on this, because it was last flooded in 2012, I think it was. And I was able to speak to that person directly and get these situations sort of solved and get it back. So basically that turned the whole situation around almost completely, and that took only 48 hours. Now, normally that can take 2 to 3 weeks to actually get information back if you're going to get the full information back. And it's not, I'm not saying that just because we're particularly sort of clever. It's because we have this working relationship that we've been able to evolve both with the councils and the clients. We want to help do the best thing for our clients. Unfortunately, a corporate provider of these particular type of service that we do not have the time or the knowledge of that particular local area to be able to do it.
And I think that's the size of it, isn't it? It's neither knowledge nor the time to put into it. And I guess you guys do. It still amazes me that these corporate providers often provide much longer lead times before the information is available than you guys, even though you ostensibly you're providing more information. It's an interesting equation. Thank you once again, Hamish, for putting this together. I think it's great that we laud IPSA. I think what they're doing is fundamentally heads and shoulders above what else is out there. Heather, thank you very much for being such a great spokesman for it as well. And to all of you out there, if you find the story that we're telling you about what IPSA represent and what it is, if you're not a member, I urge you to consider being so. If you are a member, please don't hesitate. If you want to come on and put your experiences forward, this is the channel for you. But until the next time, I see any of you, try and keep your feet on the ground, keep reaching for the stars, and realize that if you do it the IPSA way, it's probably the more familial way. It's the way you're going to get to know people. Until next time, thank you very much and goodbye. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.